Tánaiste, an image popped onto my social media last night. It showed two boys in Rafah, their tiny bodies crushed under mountains of debris, the latest victims of Israel's atrocities in Gaza. The world will probably never know their names. We won't know how many siblings they had, what their favourite hobby was, what they wanted to be when they grow up, how scared they were for the past 7 months, how many horrors they endured, how many friends and family members they watched die, how many times they and their families had been displaced before they ended up in Rafah, desperately seeking safety, before a missile strike on the building they were staying in ended their short lives. Those boys are just two of the more than 14,000 children who've been killed in Gaza. Nearly 35,000 people now have been killed in Gaza, the vast majority civilians. Tánaiste, Israel is slaughtering people in their tens of thousands, and still the world sits idly by. Entirely absent from implementing any sanctions or even threat of sanctions has been the European Union. From the outset, the EU has not just acquiesced to the carnage, it has been complicit. There is yet to be a joint statement from EU leaders in which Israel's barbarism is even mildly criticised. Tánaiste, I acknowledge and welcome that Ireland and a minority of other EU member states have been calling for action. But it is now 3 months since the former Taoiseach and the Spanish Prime Minister wrote to the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to request an urgent review of the EU-Israel trade deal. As far as we know, von der Leyen has not even bothered to reply to that letter, never mind review or suspend the deal. Tánaiste, the Social Democrats welcome plans to recognise the state of Palestine later this month. But when is the EU going to live up to its professed values and act to stop a genocide? My questions are, has the European Commission ignored your request to review the EU-Israel trade deal? If so, what are you going to do about it? The next European Council meeting is not scheduled until the end of June. Will you call for an emergency European Council meeting and put sanctions on Israel firmly on the agenda? And finally, will the government enact the Occupied Territories Bill, a bill which Fianna Fáil supported when you were in opposition?
Thank you, Deputy O'Callaghan. Tánaiste.
First of all, I agree with the Deputy that the death toll and the horrors that are happening in Gaza are quite shocking. Death toll is now in excess of 34,000. Over 1.9 million people have been displaced. And of course, we have thousands and thousands of people badly injured as a result. And when I was recently at Rafah, the point made to me by UN representatives was the degree of psychosocial trauma that the entire population has been subjected to, and particularly to children. There are 17,000 unaccompanied minors in Gaza right now, 17,000 children unaccompanied, and without parents and so forth. And the trauma they're going through, and they're being helped by people who also are going through enormous trauma. We've 1.5 million people sheltering in Rafah, and any operation there will be catastrophic. When I visited Rafah, we saw CT scanners that were denied access, which were being donated. A lot of other hospital equipment being denied access by the Israeli authorities on the grounds of dual use, allegedly. A green sleeping bag, denied because it could be used as camouflage. A children's education pack, denied because it includes small scissors. Croissants with chocolate, orange juice, considered luxury items. It is unbelievable what has been denied to the people and the Palestinians within Gaza by the Israeli authorities, given the enormity of the starvation and hunger that people are experiencing. So I'm clear that the people of Gaza are being collectively punished. There's no other explanation for what is going on. And Israel has obligations in terms of facilitating full, rapid, safe and unhindered humanitarian access into and throughout the Gaza Strip, and in particular by road. And road is the most effective way of getting a sufficiency of aid in. And we've been clear that all restrictions on the work of UNRWA and other humanitarian groups must be immediately lifted. Now, in terms of, we did write to the former Taoiseach Leo Varadkar and Spanish Prime Minister wrote to the EU Commission in respect of the EU-Israel Association Agreement. It got discussed at the FAC. It will be discussed again at the Foreign Affairs Council. But we want the Commission to do a formal review, and we've already engaged with the Commission on this. It would ultimately, if there was to be sanctions at EU level, or indeed the clauses, the essential element clauses of the agreement, which involve humanitarian human rights, in all likelihood need unanimity at Council level if the Commission was to recommend such action. So we're under no illusions, given the composition of the European Union, given the different perspectives of different EU member states on this question, that this is a challenging road, but nonetheless we were correct in taking the first step, and we're going to continue to pursue it.
Deputy O'Callaghan.
I'll come back to you.
Taoiseach, we agree with you, we need action because the situation is so appalling. One of the images I saw yesterday was a small child who's lost their parents looking after a toddler and a baby. These are appalling situations. People are being massacred in Gaza. Children with hopes and dreams for the future are being left buried under rubble. So we need action on this as quickly as possible and urgently. So will you call for an emergency meeting of the European Council? Will the Irish government call for that and look for sanctions against Israel to be on the agenda? Will you do that urgently? And in terms of the Occupied Territories Bill, which you supported in opposition, will the government now support the enactment of that bill?
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
The immediate priority right now is, and again, look, I accept what you're saying. Look, war crimes have been committed. I'm in no doubt about that. And what's happening is a shocking humanitarian catastrophe. The most immediate priority is Friday. The UN General Assembly will consider the question of admitting Palestine to the United Nations and to enjoy the rights and the full gamut of what's available as a member of the United Nations. I think that vote is an important vote. The scale of that vote is an important vote, and we're supporting it, we're co-sponsoring it, with a view to ensuring as large a number of people as possible to support Palestinian membership. And I think that would give further impetus and international urgency, and also then to the question of recognition of a Palestinian state. And I think that vote on Friday is important in that respect. On the Occupied Territories Bill, the advice is clear. We have no legal jurisdiction in terms of that it's a EU legal competency. That's the legal advice from successive Attorney Generals now at this stage. And it seems to us that the majority of senior legal opinion is to that effect. I'm open to
time is up.
Further sort of examination of that from a legal perspective, but the advice has been very strong to us. So, but I think the immediate, again, the EU Council is June, I think. Yeah. We'll see what can happen there. I think the Foreign Affairs Council is going to happen before that. I think the UN on Friday, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Deputy Breeds.